Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. Oh my, coming off of a holiday weekend, we have so much to talk about today. I'm looking at our show topics, and it is just packed. This is going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait to get into it all. I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, on Instagram at Trevor Lane NBA, joined by Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. Keith, are you still just riding high right now at this point? You probably haven't even come down yet, right?
No, not really. Yeah, it was something I told you on Sunday night into Monday morning. I think I finally fell into bed around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, after wrapping everything up that I've been doing post the Celtics making it to the finals, and then right back at it all day yesterday. I was doing stuff, and then all day today. It'll continue. You know how it goes once if you cover a team when they make it, then everybody wants to talk to you, right? Because everybody wants the inside scoop on that team and all that sort of stuff. But that is not a complaint. That is a labor of love comment, very, very much so. I even broke out the 2008 champion shirt. For you, especially.
Oh, thank you.
I know that's one of your most favorite NBA finals. So I wore that, but also because it fits. 14 years later, this shirt still fits. So I'm kind of proud of that too. That
Nice.
I've gotten back into a place where I can wear 14-year-old t-shirts. So we'll take it.
Well, Keith, full disclaimer. I am hoping and praying that somehow the Warriors save us from the dark times. But as I've been saying for months now, I fully expect the Celtics to win because this is the worst Lakers season in history, and therefore that's the only way that this can possibly end or come to a conclusion. But I will say this: as much as I am living in my own hell at this moment, I am still so thrilled for you. I am so happy that I get to come on here and talk with you every day. We get to come on here and talk basketball. Consider you a good friend, and so I'm so thrilled to see you get to enjoy this moment. So I'm so torn because I get to be happy for you, but at the same time, just be absolutely gutted.
It's odd. It's an odd mindset. I've been answering this question a lot where people are like, for you personally, is this enough? And to have made it. And part of you wants to say, yeah, they get over the hump, and this is still, all things considered, a pretty young team that's under contract, most of these guys, for a while. But then part of me is like, but there's no guarantee that you'll ever get back. You don't know, so you want to take advantage every time you're there. So yeah, I'm torn on that part of it. Once the ball tips, no, I'm gonna 100% be, go get banner 18, like stop messing around, take advantage. But we'll see how we feel in a couple weeks when everything's all wrapped up. But yeah, and I'll tell you this too. I am incredibly thankful for the additional days off between just about every game of the series, minus games 3 and 4. You just need them for recovery, to write, to recover, to be ready to go following everything that happens in the finals. It's just nonstop, and then those 9 o'clock starts, which are really closer to 9:15 starts, that all just takes a little longer. And I don't know if people really notice or ever knew this. I know you probably do from the Lakers being there so many times, but all the commercial breaks are a little bit longer too. So that also factors in as
The
well.
3-hour game. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. It turns into exactly that, almost a 3-hour game. But again, these are not complaints. These are just laying it out there. And yeah, we're excited. So you want to talk about the series a little bit, and then we can get into all the
just
news?
a moment before we get to it. I have to know.
Sure.
Give me your thoughts on this. Everybody's been talking about this. Jimmy Butler, was that the wrong decision to shoot that shot? And how did you feel when the shot was in the air?
I'll answer the second part first. When it was in the air, my legit thought was not again. Like I was just instant. Like I went to a dark place in that, I don't know, millisecond, half second.
And that's it. But you go there, but in that moment, it feels like that moment lasts forever.
Oh my God.
While the
That
shot
was in the air for no less than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
No one will ever convince me otherwise. And then by the time they get the rebound secured, that was like a 30-minute process.
Right.
It was legit probably about a second and a half. I don't have any problem with the shot. They were in a position where I think Jimmy Butler knew they didn't have anything left. So playing for overtime, I don't know that they were going to get there. I mean, a bunch of the guys on the Heat were kind of dragging themselves up and down the court, including Jimmy Butler. I think that was Game 7 was the first real time that the Celtics, being younger and less banged up, showed up. In that series. So I think that is something to factor in there too. Why he took that. I know he's not normally a good 3-point shooter. He shoots them well in the playoffs for whatever reason that is. That he gets dialed in. So I don't really have an issue with him taking that shot at that time. Because I know the people were screaming and yelling about he should have drove on Horford. He might have got a 3-point play that way. They're not. I mean, Horford would have had to wipe him out completely for them to call a foul the way they were calling that game.
Yeah. You know what? When I look at that moment, I think as the shot was going up, I thought at first that he was going to drive, that he was going to attack. And then when he pulled up, as the shot's in the air, the first thought that went into my head was, this is the driveway shot. This is the shot that you've been taking since you were a kid at the, sitting in your driveway, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to go to the NBA finals, to win it, right? Like that's that shot. I don't blame Jimmy Butler for taking that shot. And like you said, given where the team was at, I think strategically it might even have been the right decision, even though people will say, whoa, but he's not a good 3-point shooter. You don't take playing for overtime, I don't think would have been great. You can't assume Horford's going to foul him because people say, oh, he could have gotten and one. You can't assume Horford was going to foul him. You can't even assume that it was 100% chance he was going to score if he attacked the basket, because it's certainly not. So I don't fault him for going for the win there. And who knows? It might not have. There was still time left on the clock, so it might not have even been the win. But anyway, wanted to get your opinion on it and see. Move on.
I guess the last thing I'll say too is, if you're going to say it was the wrong shot, you need to say it was the wrong shot if he made it too.
Yeah.
Because the process doesn't change there. It's just the result. And, I get it. We're a results-oriented world. But sometimes, the process is just as important as the result. But overall, I have no issue with that shot at all. Especially that it didn't go in.
Now you really have no issue with it. All right, let's get into our first topic of the day. Celtics and Warriors in the finals. This is going to be an interesting matchup. It's going to be, they played twice this year, obviously, East and West. The Warriors won one, it was close. The Celtics won one, it was a blowout, but it was later in the season. I don't know. I mean, I looked at the last series, and I remember you and I had this discussion before Heat versus Celtics. I said, does it really just come down to, is Jimmy Butler better than Jason Tatum, or is Jason Tatum better than Jimmy Butler? I thought Jimmy Butler was the best player in the series. Didn't end up mattering. They ended up losing the series. Not that Tatum was not good. I just thought Jimmy Butler was great. He was fantastic. I think Steph Curry is the big factor, and maybe it's easy to say that, but what he does, I think, is going to be particularly critical, because I don't know what you can get out of Clay in this series, what you're going to get out of Andrew Wiggins. Are they going to be able to even come close to treading water against Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum? I don't know. And to me, that puts a lot on Steph Curry to be great, especially knowing he's going to be going up against Marcus Smart. There's going to be some real challenges here for the Warriors in this matchup.
Yeah, I think one of the advantages that the Celtics have is throughout this playoff run, which you can say the Warriors have all the experience and everything from their core group. This is their 6th finals in 8 years. And that's, to me, that's more of like a career accomplishment thing. And I'm not taking anything away from them. But this particular season, these two teams, Celtics have been through way more in the playoffs. They beat the Nets. They swept them, but it was still, that's the Nets with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and all the star power under the sun in Boston. You'll get through them. Then it was Giannis and the Bucks, and that was a completely different kind of challenge. They got through that, and then the Heat. And for all that Jimmy Butler was great, the biggest thing for the Heat was their defense. They were so physical and really pounded Boston over and over and over again, that I think that running that gauntlet has them prepared more so than I think the Warriors kind of path was a little bit easier, right? A very banged up and limited Nuggets team, a Grizzlies team without Ja Morant for part of the series, and they weren't really, fully up to the task. And then in the West Finals, it was, Luka and maybe some guys will make some shots, but more often they didn't. So I think that is something that balanced for the Celtics better because I think the Warriors have been sitting longer and resting longer.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to come in with, I think, the Celtics, they're not going to have the rust factor coming in, right? We always talk rest versus rust.
Sure.
But I think it's also when the Warriors get that first look at the way the Celtics play defense versus any of the teams they've already played against, it's just completely different than what they've seen to this point in the playoffs. And I do think that gives Boston a little bit of an advantage in this series.
It's I've said it before, the Celtics in terms of their roster makeup, it reminds me of the 2020 Lakers and kind of just we're going to be bigger, faster, stronger than you, and that's how we're going to win games, and we're going to make your life hell on the defensive end of the floor. I think that Curry's going to be, I mean, the Warriors essentially to win this, the Warriors need Clay to be Clay for probably at least 3 games. You need him to, I mean, we're talking really high percentage shooting from him. You need Curry to be great most nights. And then I'm really intrigued, Draymond versus Al Horford. What is that? And I know they're not directly going to be guarding. There's going to be switches. There's all sorts of things happening there. But in terms of how they make an impact, they're not the same, but there's some similarities there that I think it's going to make for a fascinating battle. Now, I think Draymond is overall the more impactful player, but Al Horford playing the way he has been, it's not far off, and you could say that Horford makes a bigger impact perhaps on the offensive end of the floor with the shooting that he can bring. He was a little bit hot and cold in the Heat series, but I still am intrigued by that particular battle, Horford versus Draymond. I think who is a more impactful player night in and night out in that matchup is going to matter. And then do we get the same version of Kevon Looney that we saw in this last series? Because if we do, that could be a big difference maker as well. If we get the Kevon Looney that we've been seeing for a while, that's just a solid big and not great like he was last series, that's going to be a big factor as well.
Yeah, in my preview of this series for Celtics blog, which posted earlier today on Tuesday, one of the things I started it out with is we got to kind of throw out the traditional position stuff to some extent because both of these teams are going to switch a lot. They're going to play a lot of different guys. Everybody's going to kind of if you can't guard in this series, you probably can't really play.
That was another thing I was going to ask. Can Jordan Poole play in this series?
He may struggle to stay on the floor at times, I think. And that's, again, why maybe give Boston a slight advantage because they don't have any real bad defenders. Where the Warriors have a couple guys they'll put out there that you can go at a little bit, including Stephen Curry, who's never been as bad a defender as people made him out to be. But he's still, of their starting group, he's the weakest defender. And he's probably going to be on most nights, probably one of the 2 or 3 worst defenders on the floor. Now that says a lot more about how good all the other guys are, but you can go at him a little bit. But I think if we rebalance here and relook at this, the way I do think to some extent traditional position breakdowns is the way, because that's how the defensive matchups will at least start out. I think it's going to be Curry on Smart, Smart on Curry, Thompson on Brown, Brown on Thompson, Tatum on Wiggins, Wiggins on Tatum, Horford Green, and then Looney and ideally, hopefully, Robert Williams. Ime Udoka said today on Rob Williams' health update, he's good. He feels pretty good, and it didn't look like he felt pretty good during Game 7.
No, he didn't.
Really dragging himself up and down the floor, but the extra days off here and then the extra day in between games, as there's 2 days off again, except for games 3 and 4. That's big as well. So I think what we're looking at here is it's going to be how can guys win those individual matchups. And I think Curry Clay just a little bit better than Smart and Brown. And that's because Curry's better than Smart, but Smart is probably if you had to say any one defender you want to put on Steph, it would probably be Marcus Smart. But I think Brown's enough better than Clay now because Clay's just not the same guy defensively. That's the only part of his game that's really slipped, right? He's still the shooter, still the off-ball mover. He just can't really move defensively the way he used to. But then you flip into the forward line, and I think Tatum's enough better than Andrew Wiggins, and I think Horford Green is closer to even. So that flips Boston's way. And then the rest becomes what happens between the benches, the coaches, the center spot, that all, just starts to go crazy. I think one major key to this series is turnovers. Both of these teams have these games and halves where they throw the ball all over the gym. And it's whoever can control that a little bit more and take advantage of the turnovers they get, that's going to be massive game to game.
Yeah, I think that is going to be a big key in this one, and it's something people overlook. If you look at it just from a math standpoint, if you're generating about 1 point per possession, probably a little bit less in the playoffs, but usually we talk about you generate about 1 point per possession math wise. If that's the case, then every time you turn the ball over, just take a point off of your score. That's essentially what you're doing. You're taking a point away. Not to mention that if it's a live ball turnover, you're giving your opponent a possession in which their average points per possession is going to go way up. So it's a big swing. A turnover really is, particularly a live ball turnover is essentially it's a -1 for you and could be plus a point and a half or so for your opponent each time. So every turnover, as easy as it is to say, oh, okay, it was a turnover, the action's fast, and you get right back into it, it's actually a really big moment in every game, every single time the ball is turned over. Again, dead ball turnovers being different, but a live ball turnover can be really, really costly. So who takes care of the ball, I think, will be really important. And I'm curious to see what the Warriors' rotation is going to look like. I mentioned before, Jordan Poole, 28 minutes last series, averaged 28 minutes against the Mavs. If he can't be on the floor without getting switch hunted to death, who do the Warriors turn to? Right? Yeah. Assuming, if Kevon, because if the Celtics go small and they don't have Robert Williams, which they might not anyway. So if they don't have Robert Williams on the floor and you're running Draymond as your center, which is fine, who's on the floor? If you can't put Jordan Poole out there, is Gary Payton II back enough to where he can be in that mix? Are you going to trust Jonathan Kuminga? Is it Bjelica that you're putting out there to get a little bit more size? It becomes
I think it becomes Otto Porter Jr. probably more than any of those guys if he's healthy.
Dealing with his own injuries. That's what I'm getting to is Otto Porter Jr. would be the guy, but he's been dealing with his own series of injuries. So if he's not a full go and you can't trust Jordan Poole, things get very interesting for the Warriors very, very quickly there. But again, a lot of that depends upon the health of Otto Porter Jr. and that foot.
Yeah, it's by no means, even though I said I think the Celtics have advantages in a couple spots, this is going to be a super tight series. I think it's going to be a lot lower scoring than maybe the casual fan will think, because I think people think Warriors and they think
high score.
They're flying up and down. They score a million points. They don't really push pace all that much. They play about at a league average pace. Their offensive rating this year was actually fairly poor. They were down, I want to say 12th or 13th in the league this season in offense, and some of that's injury related, but a lot of that is they're still pretty dependent on the jump shots going down, and if they're not, they can struggle at times. But their defense is great. Boston's defense is great, and that to me says it's probably going to be a lot of lower scoring games, a lot of close games, and those turnovers. Just to your point about how much they can mean scoring wise, they become a huge value just to have those possessions versus not have them. Empty possessions are going to be killer in this series because you just don't know where you're going to be, possession count wise for scoring opportunities. So yeah, I think it's going to be a great series. I think we're in for an absolutely great finals. And I say this, I'm trying to keep the bias out of it. I think Golden State would have absolutely destroyed Miami because I just don't think Miami's defenders would have been able to keep up with the Warriors' offensive players. The Celtics
will to make fights.
Yeah, exactly. What will happen is the Celtics will play into your physical style a little bit because they want to get to the basket. They want to get inside. They want to do those things. The Warriors are just going to run you around. And after watching Kyle Lowry for 7 games, who is he chasing on the Warriors? He's not chasing anybody. Like, you could barely move.
Yeah.
So I think if you're a casual fan, you win in this because you've got, in my opinion, the 2 best teams in the league this year going at it. We don't usually get that in the finals. There's usually one of the 2 doesn't necessarily show up. Something happens to knock them out.
Suns fans are so angry right now with you, Keith.
Angry at your own team.
No. I mean, I think the Suns were objectively the best team over the course of the regular season, not just record-wise, but come playoff time, yes, these have been the 2 best playoff teams.
We forget, too, the Warriors were right there with the Suns until Draymond got hurt, and then Steph got hurt, and then, then they basically kind of said, all right, forget trying to even get a top 2 seed
Yep.
down the stretch. It was, let's just be healthy. And clearly that paid off and worked. Let's also, one last thing. For all the screaming and yelling about the regular season doesn't matter and blah, 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 because neither number 1 seed is there. Well, it does still matter because the Warriors, got to a position where by playing it out at the end, and winning a couple more games, they finished ahead of Boston. They get the home court advantage. Miami had home court advantage in Game 7 and ultimately didn't end up mattering, but it could have. So just, before we get too deep into, the people like to scream, see, this is why regular season doesn't matter. It still does matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it absolutely does. Just to put a bow on it, the Warriors are the minus 155 favorite as of 5 hours or so ago.
And that's been going all over the place.
Yeah, and
now it seems like it's settling between 150 and 160.
Yeah, that's going to shift and everything. But as of right now, it looks like the Warriors are the favorites going in. Don't know if I agree with that, but they are right now the favorite.
All right, let's do it. Let's do a prediction.
Okay.
Let's get yours first.
I've been saying it. I'm going to say we get a long and we get an exciting finals, and I'm going to somehow hope that Golden State saves us from the darkness, and that I'm going to say Warriors in 7. Steph Curry gets the opportunity that Jimmy Butler had and knocks it down. And then I will be stressed as possible, but at least relieved with the outcome.
And who's your finals MVP?
Curry. Curry will finally get that finals MVP.
Yeah. If the Warriors win, I think it's Warriors in 7 too, but I'm picking Celtics in 6. I think they can go on the road and get a win, maybe even 2 wins. I'm sure you've seen the stat, but I'll put it out there. In the Steve Kerr era, so these eight years where they've made the finals in 6 times, in those 8 years, Boston is 9-7 against the Golden State Warriors, the only team in the NBA with a winning record against the Warriors during this year stretch. And I believe they've also, of those 9, I think 5 or 6 of those wins have come in the Bay Area because they've obviously moved arenas in that time. So they've done quite well their winning games. And that was sometimes with even, far lesser talented teams than the Warriors that and we've seen now they've already got 7 wins on the road in this playoffs, including 3 against Miami. So, and hopefully they learn their lesson of, yeah, maybe let's try to close it out at home if we get the opportunity. Let's not do Game 7s. But this team's kind of mantra now has been nothing easy, and we don't want it that way. So We'll see.
It's going to be a battle. No blowouts, please.
Yeah.
Can we just put that request in now?
Well,
no, please, no blowouts.
Yeah.
The
basketball fan in me does not want blowouts either. The Celtics fan in me says, if Boston can engineer at least a couple, I'll happily live with it. But you know what? Even if it's close and then they turn it up in the last 2 minutes and coast, then I'd be okay with that too.
I would be okay.
I just don't need any more ball in the air moments to decide games. That's too stressful.
All right, let's get into some news. We are 20 some odd minutes into this show. We haven't gotten into our news yet, so let's get there. Let's just do this. Let's jump over it. We haven't talked about it yet since it happened over the weekend. We did have the 3-day holiday weekend. Darvin Ham to the Lakers. The Lakers made their decision Friday. In fact, right before the game, they announced it. Well, they didn't announce it. Woj and Shams announced it. The Lakers still haven't said anything official, but as of this moment, could be coming any moment right now. But Darvin Ham will be the next head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. It's the person that most Lakers fans were in support of, given the trio that was remaining. Terry Stotts, Kenny Atkinson, Darvin Ham being that group. Most preferred Darvin Ham. The reaction around the NBA was very, very positive. We saw a lot of people wishing him well and saying that he deserved this opportunity. Giannis took to Twitter and said that as well. So I think while he might not be the big name that some fans were expecting going into this process, I think that he was probably the best option available. And he's got a tall task ahead of him, a lot to handle. But, I think the Lakers, process-wise and everything, did what we hoped they would do. And landed on, I think, a really good candidate here.
Now, here's where we can switch roles for this topic.
Uh-huh.
I'm mad because I think the Lakers made the best hire that they could, and I'm not happy about it, to be quite frank. I liked the idea of Darvin Ham getting his shot. I just wanted it to be somewhere else. But all that, personal stuff aside, great for Darvin Ham. He's very deserving. I think they might have got their version of what Boston has in Ime Udoka. He had you're hearing a lot of the same kind of stuff. He's very professional. He doesn't take a lot of stuff from the players. It's now he's got a much harder job because it's not a couple guys who have only been in the league for 4 and 5 years that he's gonna really go up against. But it's still in a good position for the Lakers. I think too. LeBron came out and tweeted, I believe, about this hire and that he seems to be happy with it. So that's already, if he's on board, you're already in a pretty good place. So yeah, I think the Lakers hit a home run with this one. I think they did really, really well here.
Yeah, no complaints from me. We've already heard good things too about the Lakers. I know this is good things, but this is standard for pretty much every team in the NBA, but not having front office personnel sit in on the head coaching meeting, looking over his shoulder, Kurt Rambis, allowing him to pick his own head coach. Again, this is standard across the league, but it's stuff that the Lakers weren't allowing Frank Vogel to do. So allowing him to pick his own assistant coaches. And I think it's also key that we've already heard that, when we don't know who he's going to pick for his assistant coaches, but the goal is going to be to bring in people with head coaching experience. And I think that's important. Kind of, we saw the Nets do that with Steve Nash, bringing in Mike D'Antoni on the bench there for him. I think that's important too. So far so good, and I think this was the right decision in this moment, and we'll see how it all plays out. All right, let's talk a little bit about Zion Williamson. So his contract, the Pelicans, and we've talked about this quite a bit already, Keith. The Pelicans sounds like they're going to be heading down that Joel Embiid path where they want to put some protections in for themselves because let's face it, Zion hasn't played a lot of basketball, despite looking fantastic when he does play. I think this makes all kinds of sense. I do wonder if there's going to be any pushback from Zion, but is there really much he could say? Like, you haven't played a whole lot of basketball in the last 3 seasons, so Zion, he doesn't really have any ground to stand on there in terms of trying to.
A dog's making an appearance.
Dog cameo.
That's the bigger of the two dogs.
It's one of the perks of the front office show. Every once in a while, we get a dog cameo appearance.
People love it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Anyway, Zion.
Zion Williamson. So I just did a podcast appearance on the In the Know podcast, and the Know there is NO. It's a New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Mason Ginsberg and Shamit host that together. And those guys are great and do a wonderful job covering the Pelicans. So we had a lot of fun.
Suddenly, Mason followed me on Twitter, and I was like, "Why is there a Pelicans person following?" Like most Pelicans people don't.
You might not want to follow back. He's not always very nice to the Lakers.
No Pelicans are, or Pelicans fans are. It's weird.
It's one of the things we bond over as Pelicans and Celtics fans.
It's this weird dynamic. Anyway, it's a whole other rant that I would get in, and that would take us another 20 minutes.
Oh yeah.
I will avoid going down that road.
Yeah. I'm gonna say one quick thing. Is a complete outsider to this. That trade worked out great for both teams.
It did.
Like the Lakers got a championship out of it. Who knows what will come in the future? And the Pelicans got their future set up quite well. So back to Zion Williamson. The only reason I brought that up is we spent a lot of time talking about Zion. I also wrote a whole piece for Spot Track. All you have to do is Google Keith Smith, Spot Track, Zion. It'll pop right up. You can find it. I'm all about his contract options. And yeah, I mean, the Embiid option is the way for them to go to protect themselves if they can. We'll see what his camp says. I maybe you split the difference, and we'll give you the 5th-year player option, but we got to do the non-guarantees on there too, which could free things up for Zion potentially. So we'll see. I think that's they've been creative. We're going to talk about another contract that they signed a little bit later in the show. Here they don't have the player anymore, but they've been creative with using options and guaranteed language in the past. So yeah, I think there is a good chance that that's the way this goes. But we'll see. It's just. Be careful. You don't want to upset the player where now it finally seems like all that noise has started to go away about him not wanting to be there and that kind of stuff. I also think that probably has gone away, quite frankly, because I don't know if he feels like he has that kind of leverage to play that right now where he's just coming off a fully missed season.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's a major factor here. So I think Zion is going to be receptive to seeing some portion of his contract non-guaranteed and some protections in there in terms of games played. So we'll see how it ultimately plays out. I think the Pelicans have to tread lightly, but I think they have a case here, a legitimate one, and I think Zion is going to be. I think Zion does want to stay, but he also has to understand that the franchise has to protect themselves. And again, I think the Pelicans are playing this perfectly if they are looking to do that because they absolutely need to. From one new Lakers head coach to the last time the Lakers had a head coach that didn't have prior head coaching experience, Luke Walton.
That was nice because you even had me. I was like, this is a good tease because I don't know where he's going.
You didn't know where I was going. Well, I was. So two of the Lakers' last three head coaches now have been first-time head coaches. From Luke Walton, then went to Frank Vogel, now went to Darvin Ham. But obviously, Luke Walton was brought in to do one job, and then the job completely changed, and they got LeBron, and everything shifted. So I still think Luke Walton gets a little bit of a bad rap, but he does land with the Cavs as an assistant coach. I think he's a good coach. I think the situation around him with the Lakers changed. I don't think he did everything perfectly, but again, I do think he's a good coach, good communicator, and excited that he landed with Cleveland, where he actually spent a little bit of time playing back during his playing days.
Yeah, and for the last decade and a half, I don't judge any coach really on anything that goes on in a Kings tenure for them, because I just think it's weird stuff happens in Sacramento for guys. Excuse me, I have the hiccups. I would say too, if you're Luke Walton, like I hope all that off court stuff is done, been dealt with, whatever the situation is there. But clearly, Cleveland feels comfortable about making this hire, and I think he'll be a good assistant for JB Becker's staff.
Agreed. All right, let's get into some of the juicy stuff here. Jake Fisher, Bleacher Report, says that the Jazz and Blazers both would like to land OG Anunoby, and that Anunoby could be potentially a big name out there. Also mentioned that Anunoby could fetch a higher price than Jeremy Grant, who has been widely rumored to be one of the players that'll be out there on the trade market, was one of the players that was on the trade market at the trade deadline. The Pistons' asking price was reportedly 2 first-round picks or a young player on a rookie contract with some upside and a first-round pick. Obviously, that was not met because he stayed with the Detroit Pistons, but expected to be on the market again. And Anunoby, the Raptors could be asking for even more than that. The Jazz being a team that could want an overhaul. Could this be the landing spot for Rudy Gobert? The Raptors want a center. The Jazz have some motivation to blow this thing up to some degree and move forward. Could we see a deal featuring, not straight up, but Anunoby and Rudy Gobert, some type of trade built around those two?
We could. I don't think we will. I don't think the Raptors necessarily want to go the Gobert route. I think they want a more versatile kind of inside-outside center if they can get it. I think a guy like Miles Turner would be a better fit for them if that's the direction they wanted to go, because I just don't know that kind of going the Gobert route is what they want to do, especially after years of Marc Gasol and then Jonas Valanciunas as kind of their guys holding things down inside. So we'll see. The Anunoby stuff's interesting because there is some of Fisher's reporting is that there's been some talk around the league that he's not happy with his role there. The Raptors apparently have not been told this, but you could maybe see it, right? Siakam, Van Vliet, those two guys have the ball a lot, and then Scotty Barnes came in, give him the ball quite a bit, and that takes Anunoby a little bit out of the offense. So I wonder with him is the Jeremy Grant stuff becomes really interesting too, because if you're Portland, right, that's been the landing spot for Grant for a while. I would personally, I'd rather have Anunoby. He's a better shooter. I think they're very comparable defenders. I think Anunoby might even be a better defender. And he seems, although I'm getting the sense now that maybe he doesn't want to be the 4th, 5th, 6th guy for a team. I don't know that he's needs to be the number one guy, and that seems to be the issue with Jeremy Grant. He wants to be, the 1 or 1A in an offense, and Anunoby's younger too. So, give me Anunoby for all those reasons there. I still like Jeremy Grant, but I'd take Anunoby over him. But yeah, my guess is nothing happens with the Jazz part of this. Blazers, that's a little more interesting. I just don't know what Portland would give up they're kind of out of assets as far as trade ability goes. They don't have as much as they once did.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see ultimately who goes for him there. I mean, that's like what do you do if you're the Blazers if you really want to get Anunoby? Like it makes some sense, but we've also heard the Blazers as a landing spot for Zach LaVine. Um, I feel like
It's going to be everybody. Like, and
yeah,
so
but they're
yeah,
more of a landing spot in terms of going after a free agent, potentially freeing up some salaries and going after a guy who's hitting the market than a team that's even though they got some stuff at the trade deadline. I just don't think that's enough to go get like an Anunoby or a player like that. I mean, maybe you get into Jeremy Grant territory, but I don't know. They're going to be motivated. The Blazers are. They're going to do everything they can to find somebody. But I mean, here let's take a peek at this. So the OG Anunoby contract,
it's
we can
like
see.
17 something.
Yeah, we can see where it's at right now. What should teams be willing to give up for this deal? I mean, you've got what 17.3 million next season, 18.6 the following season, and then you've got a player option for almost 20 million the season after that. 3 seasons for a young player who's 24.
Yep.
Next year will be his age 25 season. So you're talking about a guy who's pretty much in his prime, and he's locked up, and you got to figure out the salary cap's going to go up. Like this is a good contract, I think, for a guy like OG Anunoby. The Raptors should be able to get quite a bit here. I don't know if it gets you quite to Rudy Gobert though. If we're going back to the Jazz,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's enough for Utah.
Well, and that's the challenge. His salary is only half of Gobert's, so
Right.
you're having to talk about
Gary
throwing in
Trent.
other stuff, and what would that other stuff be? From the Raptors, you can't really do it as a sign and trade because the Jazz can't. Well, they're over the tax apron, so they won't be able to take players back via sign and trade most likely. So it gets really complicated how you even make the salary math work in a trade that involves those kind of guys as the two major components because the Raptors just have to plus so much up in there, and I just don't know if that's going to be enough. So that's where it's a struggle. But yeah, he's on a great contract for sure. If we go back to two, if I can just to jump back to Portland, real quick. So Portland has their own pick this year, number 7. They would probably have to go to get Anunoby because after that, they only own their own pick if it's in the lottery for the next several years because they have that pick with Chicago, and then they do get a pick from the Bucks in 2025 as long as it's somewhere between 5 and 30. That comes from the Pelicans to complete the trade, the CJ McCollum trade after they didn't get the Pelicans pick this year. So that just becomes that much harder for them to play in there without giving up that big pick. That really becomes a challenge.
This is going to be that'll be interesting because I think that Blazers pick is one that a lot of people see as potentially on the move. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's going to be for Anunoby, but I think it's a piece that they ultimately will wind up trading in an attempt to get Damian Lillard, a team that can win right now.
Yes.
So I see that this is a move that potentially the Blazers can get in on, but you also have to look at cap wise. Are they able to bring back like Yusuf Nurkic?
So here's the thing.
That move?
Yeah, here's the thing. They're sitting on a 20.8. So I want to be clear, 20.8, not 28, but $20.8 million trade exception from the McCollum trade. So Anunoby easily fits inside that. A lot of guys do fit inside that trade exception. So then it becomes, all right, well, we're bringing in, call it $17 to $20 million through the trade exception. Then, we re-sign Nurkic. All of a sudden, the team can re-sign Anthony Simons, of course. All of a sudden, that team starts to get pretty expensive pretty quickly. But they've paid the tax in the past. The other complicating factor is they're in the middle of being sold. Mm-hmm. So we don't know where that's going to go either. There's just a lot of things to work around for the Blazers. The good news is they gave Joe Cronin the job of GM. They let him hire Mike Schmitz. I can't think of the name right now, but they hired another assistant GM.
Oh, yes.
I'm going to look it up because I want to get it because it's just good to get those things. But Sergey Olivia So they brought him in as well. He's a well-known analytics guy in the analytics community. So clearly they are committed to building up this front office and letting them work. So hopefully anything to do with the tax doesn't really factor in. But yeah, let's see. I mean, if nothing else, now we've got a little bit of intrigue around the Raptors that maybe we didn't have, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, another name potentially out there on the market in OG Anunoby. You mentioned this contract earlier, Josh Hart.
Yep.
This is an interesting one. And what are we thinking on Josh Hart? Will that contract be?
So Jake Fisher's reporting in this whole big piece that he did, which is where a lot of our news is coming out of, says they're likely to guarantee that deal. That's probably not all that big of a surprise. What that does lean me more towards believing they're going to stay over the cap then, which makes sense because of the presence of the McCollum trade exception that allows you to do a lot of the same things you would have done otherwise. Then it gets really interesting though, because their last year, the 23-24 season, also 12.96 million. That's as close to what I like to call the Major League Baseball mutual player option, where it is a player option or mutual option, I should say. It's a player option, but it's also fully non-guaranteed. So even if he opts in, it's then fully non-guaranteed. So it does become one of those kind of interesting, fun things of, all right, you can opt in, but we're still going to waive you and get out of it for nothing. We rarely see those kind of deals come to fruition like that in the NBA. But it is kind of interesting. That's why I mentioned it when I was talking about Zion. Maybe give him the player option, but with the non-guaranteed year on the end, and everybody still kind of gets what they want both ways.
Could you see a scenario where they pick up the option here on Josh Hart, they guarantee that money, and then ship him out in a trade?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you could go that way too. They could non-guarantee or could guarantee that fully and then use that as part of the trade. But they like him there. They
and they should.
Be a good fit. Which I think him, Simons, and Lillard, you have your 3-guard rotation to move forward with. There with those 3 guys.
All right. Let's talk Hornets. Mike D'Antoni, Kenny Atkinson, rumored to be the 2 finalists. Darvin Ham, this came out, would have been actually today would have been interviewing with the Charlotte Hornets had he not taken the Lakers job. So the Lakers were able to sneak in there and get Darvin Ham before the Hornets could do a final interview with him. But Mike D'Antoni, Kenny Atkinson, interesting that Terry Stotts isn't part of this list. I thought he would be a nice fit for them. Could lead to some interesting discussions for the Lakers. We had heard that Terry Stotts did not want to be an assistant coach, wouldn't be an option there, but there was also speculation that, if he doesn't get the Hornets job either, maybe that changes. But that's a different topic here. Mike D'Antoni, Kenny Atkinson, the fun answer is Mike D'Antoni. But now we're starting to hear that Kenny Atkinson might actually be kind of like in the lead for this job, at least in the clubhouse, not necessarily with ownership. So what are your thoughts there between those 2 potential coaches? Very different things that you'd be getting from each one.
Yeah, it's D'Antoni is you're going to play up tempo. It's probably, LaMelo Ball, not that he isn't already, but becomes even more must own in like fantasy basketball.
Yeah, for fantasy basketball, D'Antoni there would be brilliant.
Exactly. He's just going to pile up stats. They less likely that they would need to add a true big because he's probably going to go small. So that, really starts to fit in. All right, maybe they start running more of PJ Washington, Miles Bridges, Gordon Hayward, Terry Rozier, and the LaMelo Ball all together. And there it is. There's your group, and you run with that quite a bit. I worry about Hayward holding up because we know D'Antoni does not go deep into his bench. His starters are usually all among the minutes leaders.
Easy solution to that. Easy solution. Just reunite Mike D'Antoni with Russell Westbrook. There you go. It's all good. It's all good. You make sure Russ likes to run fast.
Yeah, sure. Definitely. Yeah, you could definitely do that, I suppose. But yeah, that's the fun one. Then Atkinson comes in with the player development, bend to him of great guy who has helped grow young teams into winners. And that's what the Hornets are. They're looking to go another step. They'd probably then be a little more traditional the way they build out their roster. They're probably looking to at that point, I'm guessing you keep Mason Plumlee, you keep Kelly Oubre for another year and build it out that way. So yeah, it's interesting. And it sounds like they're waiting till Michael Jordan is back from his postseason vacation, which should be any time now to kind of complete this and get it done. So my guess is this happens within the next couple of weeks and everything's in place well ahead of the draft.
All right.
The Hornets have 2 picks in the draft, 13 and 15. So, that's kind of important to have a coach there too.
Could be a move up candidate too with those two.
Could be.
Could be.
Yeah, because remember they drafted 2 guys last year, James
Mhm.
Bouknight and Kai Jones, neither of whom was all that good. So, I don't know that you want to bring 2 more young guys in on top of 2 guys last year on top of a roster it's already pretty young.
What do you think's the highest pick they could get with those two?
13 and 15?
Yeah.
I don't know, like 10.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're not moving up a lot. You're not moving in the top 5 or anything like that. But I wonder if you get. I mean, the Blazers wouldn't want to move it. It wouldn't make sense at 7, but be interesting.
No, not that far. I wouldn't want to go up that far.
All right, the Knicks. They still want a point guard, but it sounded like they're realizing that Donovan Mitchell is probably not going to be that guy. Jalen Brunson sounding more and more like he's going to stick with the Dallas Mavericks. Nothing set in stone, of course. The Knicks would like to get a guard like a Jalen Brunson, but with the lure being that he could be kind of the full-time guy there. But the Mavs, if you heard Mark Cuban, already said that they can pay him more than anybody else, suggesting that they probably will.
Will, yeah.
Yeah. So where does that leave the Knicks in terms of the point guard market?
Yeah, where I hope it leaves them is not overreacting and doing something silly, where you go out and use a bunch of trade capital to go get somebody who's not really all that good. Like one of the guys Jake Fisher mentions could be maybe D'Angelo Russell. I don't dislike D'Angelo Russell as a player. I'm just not sure he's the guy for this team necessarily. Malcolm Brogdon's another name that's been thrown around. I like that one a little bit better. He comes a little bit cheaper, in terms of per year salary. I think his fit's a little better because he does really well playing off the ball. So I don't want to take the ball out of RJ. Man, the Boston accent came out there big time. I went with the RJ. I don't want to take it out of RJ Barrett's hands anymore.
Who was the guy like 10 years ago that fell in the draft? I think it was an RJ. Shooter, landed with the Celtics.
AJ Hunter.
There you go. I knew there was a heavy accent with that one. Hunter. I couldn't remember the last name. That
was the same year they drafted Terry Rozier, boy. That's how I used to talk. I don't want to take the ball out of Barrett's hands anymore. So another kind of traditional dominant on-ball point guard. I don't know, because Julius Randle's going to have it plenty there. So I don't know. Just don't be silly. They're talking about trading Emmanuel quickly. I know he didn't have the greatest year, and his shot wasn't all that good this year, but I still think there's a lot of potential there. They're talking about trading the draft pick to maybe go get somebody. I don't know. Just don't stay patient. Don't shortcut this, because we know how it goes when the Knicks try to take the shortcuts. It doesn't work out well.
Do you really want to put D'Angelo Russell and Julius Randle back together?
Yeah, that's a good question too.
But I mean, on the plus side, it's an expiring contract.
Yeah.
So your commitment, if it doesn't work, you move on.
And if you could wipe away a couple of those salaries that maybe carry a year longer, like if it was like Fournier in the deal or something, then now you're in a spot where, all right, that's not so bad, because now we reset things a little bit. The fact that Russell's even been floated, that says to me, let's see what the Wolves are going to do. I know we're going to talk a Tim Connolly topic here in a second, but it is interesting because I think they're probably looking. Do we want to put Anthony Edwards at the 2 more, where he can really take advantage of his physical profile more so than when he has to play a lot at the 3? So there's a lot of things going on with the Wolves that bear watching as well.
Let's jump to it. Tim Connolly, the Wolves, the details. So it was reported that there was a percentage of ownership stake here, which was surprising. That was the thing where I went, I mean, Denver can't match that. And so I didn't fault them much for letting him walk away. Now we're hearing that's not the case. So where are we at here with Tim Connolly and the Wolves?
Yeah, so it is 100% confirmed now that it is that he does not have ownership stake. Mark Stein's been on this for a few days now, been reporting like that was not That's not actually what it is. Mark Stein said it reported on Sunday that the oft-reported equity piece of Tim Connolly's new deal is actually a bonus based on the franchise value continuing to go up. And then Glenn Taylor confirmed that at Connolly's introductory press conference today. So what happened is when asked, Connolly was like, I don't want to get into the contract stuff. Not uncommon, right? But then Glenn Taylor said he's on a bonus program, just like a lot of people are. If the team does well, he does better. So that puts that to bed. No ownership stake for Tim Connolly.
But if the value of the franchise goes up, then he gets more, basically, which is where you could see that, okay, he gets a percent. You know what I mean? Like, people could misconstrue that. I can see where the wires could get crossed there. But it is an important distinction because, again, to me, it just puts a little bit more on Denver, where you're like, say, well, why didn't you try to keep him then?
Yep.
I could see where if it was ownership, like that was my one caveat there was like, hey, if it's ownership stake, I could see where Denver went, sorry, we're out. That's too rich. But
absolutely,
if that's out of it, I don't know. It puts Denver in a little bit more of a bad light for not just spending to keep him.
I agree.
All right. Well, I think that about does it. We did it. Had a lot to get through. We got through it. Appreciate everybody for joining us here and hanging out with us as we talk some NBA basketball. We're back tomorrow. I'm sure there's going to be plenty more going on between now and then. Oh boy, it's going to be a busy week, Keith. Going to be a busy week, and we're only heading into, like, once the finals end. We've been talking about this a bunch. It just gets busier. This is what we're getting into.
Absolutely.
Time of the year. So get ready, rest up as much as you possibly can, because oh boy, it is going to get crazy for the next month and a half here, maybe even a little bit more.
Yeah, month and a half, mid-July.
Yep. Absolutely. Make sure you do subscribe. Don't forget to turn on those notifications over on Apple Podcasts as well. Follow us there. Make sure you give us that 5-star rating and review. Great way to help out the show. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.